Did you know this Fortnite skin had to be banned because it's actually illegal? And that's not the only thing Fortnite's had to remove, as today we're taking a look at over 80 things taken out of the game, and I bet you won't know all of them. Like the K-pop skin, whose file was added into the game back in Chapter 1, but a few updates later mysteriously removed. The skin also appeared in official artwork for creative mode back in Season 8, and at a very similar time, Samsung announced the iconic skin that was released and we all know. The K-pop skin just disappeared and Epic never talked about it again, and it was never released to the public. One of the most forgotten about but awesome loot that was only in the game right at the end of Season X were loot stars. These only fell on the map in Starry Suburbs, which was a tiny part of the island, and opening these up would give you weaponry and loot. It was actually the only way to get the legendary tactical SMG as well. But despite this cool looting feature, loot stars have never returned, like the ostrich shotgun. This was actually the shotgun used with the brute mech. It was only accessible when using the top half of the brute. It was never meant to be a separate weapon, but if you spawned it into creative during Season X and destroyed the brute, there was a very small chance it would actually drop this shotgun, but it did exist for just a few days. And did you ever spot Hilbert in-game? Available within Chapter 5 Season 4, one of the map designers accidentally misclicked on the terrain, creating this little hill in the middle of the map that was not meant to be there, getting added into the game, a nickname Hilbert, but removed after only 14 days. A bit like the golden ticket. It's back in Chapter 1, Season 2, Fortnite worked on a very rare item that if you found on the map would reboot your entire team on a mini battle bus flying over the island. This was added years before we finally got reboot vans in Season 8. Epic tested this golden ticket, decided they didn't like it, so took it out of the game, making one of the rarest items ever added. A little bit like this outfit that every time I see, I get a little bit upset because when it was first added to the store, I was not around to buy it. And since then, it has never come back and will never come back to Fortnite. It unfortunately was controversial because the skin looked a little bit too similar to Nazi uniform. People picked up on it and Epic Games decided it wasn't a good idea to bring it back again. It's been over 1,500 days since this skin was available in the item shop. And if you did manage to pick it up, consider yourself lucky because it's an extremely rare skin. Something that I do think will eventually be released, despite the fact it's been worked on now for 5 years. Back in 2019, Epic started working on weapon charms, a brand new type of cosmetic that can be attached to your weapon to customize it even more beyond wraps. They were first found in the in-game files for the release of Chapter 2 many years ago, and this cosmetic type was intended to be tied to achievements and unlocks in-game rather than a purchasable cosmetic, but obviously they were never released, and I believe that because you can't see your weapon very much in third-person mode, we're waiting for the inevitable release of first-person mode where weapon charms on your gun will be a lot more obvious and make a lot more sense. Only incredibly lucky players will remember or even have found the mythic mushroom. It had a 0.01% spawn rate, as a normal mushroom on the ground could randomly spawn in as gold. If you were lucky enough to find one of these and you decide to harvest it, you'd made a big mistake, as it will turn back into a normal mushroom, only giving you 5 HP. However, if you found it and you ate it straight off the ground, it would instantly give you 100 shield. It was only around for 1 season during Chapter 2 and has never returned since. In Chapter 1, people realized they could run mods to actually bring in characters like Spider-Man that at the time weren't in the game. A creator called Landon famously modded in a Thanos skin 3 years before it was available, a custom Galaxy Omega skin, and other modded illegal skins that weren't meant to be in the game, and Epic decided to focus in on him and banned his account with 1 million V-Bucks on it. In Chapter 2, Epic changed the way their files work, meaning people couldn't mod skins, but now people have worked out new ways of being able to mod their characters, bringing in characters like Mickey Mouse, Goofy, SpongeBob, and crazy characters that we could honestly get in the future, but should not be available now, and their accounts will definitely be gone soon. Now, I remember this Easter egg. Back in Chapter 1, if you built a brick wall and saw a gnome in there, it was about a 1 in 100 chance of it appearing. It was really cool if you did spot it. However, there was another Easter egg that was so rare, I never even managed to find it, which is a random chance for any teddy bears on the island to be replaced with an actual beehive. The thing would be broken instantly, deal no damage, and was just taken directly out of Fortnite Save the World, but was an incredibly rare Easter egg, and I would love to know if any of you guys have actually seen this in-game, because in my 8 years of playing, I haven't. Fortnite came up with the idea of the annual pass in 2020, which allowed you to get all of the battle passes for that year, along with 7 exclusive annual pass cosmetics, with a price tag of 7,200 V-Bucks. But it turned out that this was actually just a prototype, and Epic Games internally had decided to scrap this idea, and instead this was turned into what we know now as the Fortnite crew packs with monthly rewards for everyone that has it. If you guys know what I mean when I say the word Fortbytes, then you probably remember grinding for these things, as you had to find all 100 of them around the island to unlock the secret singularity skin, and there were so many YouTube tutorials to help you with these because they were so hard to do. It also revealed Bunker Jonesy's secret message on the wall, which would actually predict the future events happening in Fortnite, including the monster versus robot event. But Epic realized that this system was way too complicated and difficult for players and was replaced with a far easier quest system. Now, what if your skin could have hats? That would be so cool, where they were actually planned alongside gliding tricks all the way back in Chapters 1, Season 3. But rather than releasing hats, they went with the outfit and the back bling. Only recently we got kicks, but I wouldn't be surprised if we still get hats in the future. Did you know you're not allowed to recreate anything from Chapter 2 onwards? In Fortnite Creative, Epic Games will literally ban your account. And if you try and make a map from Chapter 1, you can do it, but you will not earn money from it. When UEFN first launched last year, everyone rushed to make remakes of Chapter 1 and Chapter 2 islands, except Epic Games realized that it was in their plans to bring back these old chapters officially through things like Fortnite OG. They didn't want creators to be controlling the remakes of these maps, which is why they enforce these rules and why you'll never see these chapter maps being remade for us to play, only if Epic decide to bring these things back themselves, like we should be getting with Chapter 2 later this year. And at the same time, Fortnite added fire into the game. Did you know that they actually added fire extinguishers? Just like the fact you could find a gas canister that if you shot would explode and set things on fire nearby, Epic wanted the equivalent that could put out fires. But after being tested for a very small amount of time and being nearly impossible to find on the island, they took it out the game, but it does still exist in the files, so could be added again soon. One of the coolest skins that was meant to come along with the annual pass was the Brilliant Bomber skin. There was other skins as well, including Astra and Bash, but these two skins were eventually released separately. And some sneaky people managed to get a leaked store link to actually purchase this annual pass that wasn't fully released to get the Brilliant Bomber on their account, but most of these people got banned. And the skin has never fully been released, despite it being spotted on official Nerf Fortnite boxes. And the most recently, it's actually got its own Lego figure, so the chance of it actually finally coming to the game could actually happen. Did you know that Epic actually deleted the Ratboy Eminem skin from everyone's lockers for a few days by accident? Eminem was getting his new Houdini emote coming to the item shop, and they accidentally encrypted both the emote and the skin, meaning no one in the game could use it until they realized a few days later and made sure it was back in everyone's locker. Fortnite is filled with different vehicles, from a Ferrari collab we've had in the past to Lamborghinis in-game now. But did you know that a certain car has been removed forever? And that's the police cars. Police cars could be found as one of the randomly spawning cars around the map back in Chapter 1. And just 6 weeks before drivable vehicles were added in Chapter 2, Epic took the decision to remove all police vehicles from the game, as they didn't want to associate any real-life issues with police and police cars with the Fortnite video game, so there's no chance we'll ever see these back again. Have you ever seen the Gemini skin before? This was added into the in-game files in Chapter 1 Season 8 and got a lot of people excited for it to come to the item shop. Only a few weeks after being added into the in-game files, it was then completely removed. Epic ended up tinkering the design and changing the head and re-releasing it in Season X as the Astro Assassin. Everyone wondered if the original Gemini skin would ever come to the game. But if you take a look at this skin from the game Paladins and then the Gemini skin design, you can see they sit a little bit too close together, and it's believed to be the reason that they had to redesign this skin, so we'll never get the original Gemini skin. But a gift Epic Games did give us was one of the most overpowered mythics of all time, in the form of the Infinity Blade, where literally every player on the map would be fighting to pick this thing up because it was so strong and powerful, to the point where it was even usable in competitive games of Fortnite, causing absolute havoc. The only item you could hold was the Mythic Blade, but you had 200 health. You would heal, shield, and health when you would take people down, and was just ridiculously overpowered to the point that one of the biggest items of that season had to be removed just 3 days later because Epic Games couldn't work out a way to not make it overpowered. But did you ever find Bud the Mushroom? I was playing when this was available, but never found it myself. But creators like Lachlan did, and are some of the few people in the entire world to get footage of it, available for only 24 hours on the very last day of Chapter 2, Season 2. This mushroom would have a tiny chance of spawning near a tree. You could wake him up by emoting, feeding him 100 wood, and he'd follow you around, constantly giving you health and shield. But Fortnite never talked about the fact he was added or why he was only in the game for such a short amount of time, making him one of the most mysterious additions to Fortnite ever. Thankfully, we did get the Sabrina Carpenter caffeinated emote, but when it came out, everyone was upset. They changed the speed of the emote, and everyone was so upset that it was a little bit quicker. They had to remove it from the item shop, take it out of people's locker, correct the speed before bringing it back to the shop. People really like Sabrina Carpenter. Fortnite in China no longer exists, but during the period that it did, there were some exclusive cosmetics that were only available over there. 4 items could only be obtained by players playing Fortnite in China, and there was no way to transfer these over to any other Fortnite accounts. These include the Power Grip Pickaxe, the Pointer Pickaxe, the Insignia Backbling, and the Penguin Backbling. And since now Fortnite China is shut down and unavailable, these will never be available unless Fortnite at some point decide to add them into the normal game. The Swamp Jet Glider was meant to be added into the game, but an Epic Games employee actually leaked it, and it was never ended up added. This is really mysterious and was meant to match the Swamp Stomper skin, with the glider having a light style and a dark style. It was fully ready. It was designed. I mean, you can see the picture on screen here, but Epic decided to scrap it last minute. Meant to be released in Chapter 2. It never was and will probably never see the light of day. And the Porter Bridge actually exposed data miners, as it was a Porter item that when thrown down would instantly build you a bridge, except the description of it was specifically designed. If you found it early, you'd be getting called out, as it says, you shouldn't be seeing this. How did you find it? Are you magic? It was a bit of a joke. The building of the bridge was a meme taken from the unofficial Fortnite guidebook that Laserbeam made super popular, and the item was almost put there just to figure out which files leakers can find. It was never actually a fully released item. And in the very first update of Chapter 3, a new Icon Series emote, Tunak Tunak Tun emote, was ready to release. An awesome emote, but again, another controversy aligning with the singer meant Fortnite had to add it to the game and quickly take it out again. If there's one thing you think of when you think of Season X, it's probably the brutes. These things were ridiculously overpowered and were essentially put in the game just so bad players could get easy kills. Fortnite even put out a statement saying that the average number of kills bad players were getting had risen because of the mech being in the game. Despite the majority of players absolutely hating it, they stuck it in the season and did not take it out until we moved into the next chapter where the brute was gone, and despite it having come back in a salvaged form, an updated form, it was never as overpowered as it first was in Season X. People were equally upset when the Imposters game mode, a super popular mode added in 2021 based off of Among Us, which initially had a bit of controversy as Epic Games launched it without telling Among Us that this mode was coming. Thankfully, these two companies came together, and as we know, we got the Among Us collaboration with cosmetics in game. But unfortunately, later in 2022, the Imposters mode was removed and will never return, with the in-game files being completely gone, despite how much people loved this mode. People also loved the Bandaged Bazooka, but did you know there was a mythic version only available in the Bodyguard LTM back in Chapter 2? And the mythic version had unlimited ammo, but was only in the game for a few hours. It was never properly released, has never come back, and despite how great it was, this thing is now permanently banned from the game. And how cool would it be if you could actually showcase your loading screens on a skin, backbling, or pickaxe? That was the whole point of the Artist Showcase set. with multiple male and female skins, added initially in Chapter 5, and then referenced again in Chapter 6. Fortnite seemed to be cooking away at these and would be an amazing skin to showcase your loading screens, but there's no news on if they'll ever actually be released. Kirby was meant to come to the game in 2020. As a huge Nintendo fan like myself, his character was spotted in the official Party Royale launch trailer, where they ended up having to re-release it with a blurred version of Kirby, trying to hide him from the game. And at the same time, Nintendo added a Kirby wallpaper to their site with the Fortnite logo on it as well. A collaboration was meant to happen here, but it never did, a bit like the Samus Aran skin from Metroid Prime, with internal Epic Games documents leaking the fact that this was meant to be coming to the game. Loads of information on here has come true, like the fact we're going to get Ariana Grande. We've now got Lady Gaga years later, and The Rock. All of these things have come true, apart from this one. A skin that would look incredible in Fortnite, with there even being a teaser outline of the Samus Aran armored skin spotted in the Batman Zero War comic. But since this moment, it's never been spoke of again, and it sounds like the communication between Nintendo and Epic Games broke down for all of these collabs to not happen. And Epic loved to add new ways to tweak your weapons, and upgrading them using benches was a feature in Chapter 2, but for a single season, in Chapter 2 Season 3, it was an actual item you could pick up, take it with you, throw it down whenever you wanted. You could upgrade or side grade a weapon. The item version of the upgrade bench was only available for that single season. Did you ever use it? And hold on a second, Epic. They just deleted the most important part of Fortnite. For only one day, thankfully, back in Chapter 4, if you went to the item shop and clicked the Support a Creator button, it wasn't there to click. Epic accidentally removed it, and I heard they just wanted to stop people using code ALIE, which sounds insane. It's the best code to use. I went and checked, and thankfully, it is still there. So enter ALIE in the item shop. If you're enjoying this video so far, I really appreciate it. And I loved the block. This replaced Risky Reels back in Chapter 1, Season 7, and essentially was a player-made area that would be updated every other week and added onto the island, so you could literally design a part of the Fortnite map. One of the coolest things about this island was that it had a chest I don't think we've ever seen since, which guaranteed a legendary weapon from it and had a mythic design. So it was worth landing here in game, but unfortunately, someone in Season 9 designed a part of the block that got in game but wasn't appropriate, and Epic missed it as well, getting everyone into trouble. And since the re-release of Fortnite OG, you can see the base of the block just sinking off the island, so even that wouldn't revitalize this awesome feature. And another cool feature was sand tunneling. In Chapter 2 Season 5, there was a load of sand on the island, but it was super buggy, caused so many glitches, and was disabled and re-enabled multiple times until in the end it was just removed from the game completely, and we may never see it come back. The Harmony Lee skin was meant to be released for Rainbow Royale just last year. It was added into the in-game files during Chapter 4. There were two different styles for the skin, with a default look and a streetwear look, and the original skin was actually designed by a creator on Twitter. Unfortunately, when the skin was really close to being released, some allegations came out about the original designer, and due to this, Epic Games decided to pull it and never released it. And it's such a pity to see a skin that is fully ready to go, but not actually available for us to use. Now, I remember messing around with propane tanks when they were added in during Chapter 2. They could be picked up, carried and thrown, and even exploded when hit with a pickaxe. And then in Fortnite's Fire update, one season later, propane tanks gained the ability to actually ignite structures and spread fire around the island. They were mainly found around the rig areas, and you could mess around with them, but were super buggy and glitchy. Not many people ever even realized that you could mess around and use these, so Epic Games removed them and haven't brought them back since. With the launch of the secret Deadpool skin in Chapter 2, everyone was super excited to get him, and the item shop updated to add in the Dragoncorn glider as a part of the Deadpool set. Everyone rushed to pick it up in the item shop, but as everyone applied this glider and used it in-game, they realized it was pretty overpowered. Everyone in competitive Fortnite was using this glider as you spun around it and made yourself super hard to hit as you were gliding through the sky. And Epic realized they'd probably messed up here, and just 30 days after it entered the item shop, they changed the animation to be a lot more simple and also offered players refunds if they wanted to give it back. Whilst you didn't want to be picking up the propane tanks, a lot of people were using devices called Cronus Maxes. These are devices that could run different scripts and allow you to basically do cheats within game. Things like auto aim or shooting quicker or even auto building were all possible through these devices. Epic now have it where if this is plugged in and you're playing Fortnite, it'll be able to detect it. You'll not be able to play Fortnite. And your account will actually be fully banned if you try and bypass and use this device without Epic knowing. The designer of the Indiana Jones skin wrote their own secret message, which even people in Epic didn't know about. If you went into replay mode and took a look at the top of his head, it said, "Liam and Finn love Dad." A message, I presume, to his kids. But it wasn't meant to be there, and I don't think he thought anyone would figure it out. And unfortunately, Epic removed it in the next update. What a sweet message for his kids. But not as much as everyone wants Travis Scott to return. The iconic skin was available during the release of the huge in-game concert, which has never returned since, but Fortnite actually planned on making the skin return to the item shop, added everything it needed to pop up into the item store in January 2021, and it was meant to appear months later in April 2021, but for some reason, just 4 hours after it was loaded up into the item shop, ready to go live, Epic Games removed it. This was months before the unfortunate tragedy that happened at the Astro World live concert. There was no reason for Epic Games to not re-release the skin, and since then, Epic have openly said that it's actually up to Travis himself if he wants a skin to return, and Epic Games aren't stopping it from happening, so we need to be hounding Travis Scott himself if we want this skin back in the game. And when it comes to getting an upper hand in Fortnite, Epic Games aren't too keen. Like players that used to stretch their resolution to be able to see a little bit more, gain an advantage over the opponent, and generally just not make Fortnite look too good, but pro players were obsessed with it. And Epic Games definitely weren't, so they made it you could become banned if you played stretch resolution, and the method to make the game look like this was patched by Epic, and they disqualified any pros that played like this going into tournaments or in tournaments themselves. Gunner, the very first pet to be sold in the item shop. However, after only being in the item shop for 20 hours, Epic Games removed it and took it away from everyone's locker that had bought it. It was in the shop for 1,000 V-Bucks, and players received 1,200 V-Bucks back as compensation, and Epic Games explained that they should have never put this item into the item shop, because if we go back to the Season 6 Battle Pass, we can see that the Bonesy Pet Backbling was almost exactly the same. Only OGs will ever have used the default dance to play all 3 of its original tracks, because as early as Season 3 back in 2018, Fortnite had to remove one of the tracks that would play whilst you default dance because it sounded way too similar to George Michael's Faith song, and Epic Games could be hit with a lawsuit for this one. This version of the default dance song has never returned and never will be in the game again. Did you know at the start of Chapter 2, you could actually vote for skins that would come into the item shop? This feature was called Community Choice Vote and would often include items that hadn't been in the shop for a while, as you pick between 3 different things to return. Whichever one got the most amount of votes would appear in the item shop the very next day. I love this feature, but it was only in the game for 1 month, and then Fortnite stopped using it. In fact, it has been completely removed from the in-game files and never talked about since by Epic Games. But not as rare as a unicycle emote. A traversal emote added in during the Chapter 2 Marvel season. It was going to cost just 500 V-Bucks. If you think you've seen this before, the Last Laugh Joker bundle can actually see this unicycle emote in use. Despite having sat in the files for 6 years now, it's never properly been something that you can purchase in the item shop, despite the fact that almost all of us have seen it in that trailer being used. Please, Fortnite, can we actually have this one? Back in 2018, Fortnite released 2 referee skins as a part of their NFL collaboration. Then in 2020, they released a brand new set of NFL skins again. The new set also contained referee skins. However, if you compare these skins, they're actually identical. Before the release of the new set of NFL skins, they actually sent out the whole cosmetic set to a very select group of creators. When they realized that they'd basically just duplicated these referee skins, they pulled them from the release of the item shop, but all the creators that were sent the skins early were still given them. I've checked my account and I unfortunately don't have them, but a few creators out there do, and they will never make their way to the item shop. Now, the Iron Man NPC that was added onto the map with the big Stark Industries update also saw the addition of a hover emote. This emote had an icon, name, and rarity, and was specifically tied to Iron Man as a built-in emote, a bit like his ability to transform. And it was believed this was meant to come with the skin in that season's battle pass, but they decided that literally being able to hover was a bit too overpowered for an emote, so they never ended up releasing it. And we've seen a developer gun, but have you ever seen an actual developer in your game? Well, you may have done if you were playing PUBG Party Royale when an Epic developer accidentally joined a lobby as a Fall Guys skin, which you're not meant to be able to do in Fortnite. This is only known to have happened once ever, so if you are in this clip, you've experienced one of the rarest things in Fortnite, as the Fall Guys skins are only meant to be used in the Fall Guys mode, but this developer messed up, as Fall Guys characters can't even hold weapons, their hitboxes are different, they can't do emotes. This was not meant to be a thing. Reality augments were Fortnite's way of adding in perks and abilities to the game with Chapter 4. Of course, with OG Fortnite, augments were removed because they weren't in the game back then, and leading up to the launch of Chapter 5, everyone expected them to return, and in fact, with the launch of Chapter 5, new augments were found in the in-game files, ready to go. But looks like Epic Games may never bring them back again, despite it being such a popular feature of Chapter 4. Just like we'll never see skin rarities again. Unfortunately, Epic Games decided that skins should no longer be ranked from grey all the way up to legendary, and decided that all skins will be equal, maintaining in-game different series like the Icon, Marvel, or Dark sets, but color rarities applied to skins no longer are a thing. You'll see these changes in the item shop as well, with rarities no longer showing up. You could also get banned simply for jumping on a swing back in Chapter 1. This is obviously done harmlessly, as there were loads of swings around the Fortnite island, but if you jumped on one and started moving, the swing would move with you, causing you to move way faster than the game thought was possible, and deciding that you were actually cheating. As a result, some people got accidentally banned. Fortnite realized this and removed the swings from the game. They brought it back a few seasons later, but the actual moving physics of the swings have not returned back since because it caused so much havoc. And we all love porta bunkers or porta fortresses, but what about the mega porta fort? Look at this thing. It's a literal giant castle. Designed initially for the 50v50 mode, throw it down and it would create this behemoth of a build. There was even a giant ramp going from the ground up to the top. But if you imagine multiple of these being thrown down at the same time, it's probably going to crash the game. So despite it looking awesome, it was never actually usable. Now, have you ever heard of the Alien Knockback Launcher? It dealt no damage, was only available within the Alien Mothership minigame within the Battle Royale island, just to push other players away and basically troll them. Thanks to a reboot van glitch, you could take this launcher and the alien jetpack into actual Battle Royale. You wouldn't be killing anyone, but you would be messing with them, and it was a really cool bug. One thing I wish would come back is the very first version of the compact SMG. Added in back in Chapter 1 Season 5, there's an epic and legendary version. It was so powerful, but it could actually deal more damage per second than Thanos' mythic gauntlet. I'm not joking. It was so strong that Epic had to reduce the power output just 24 hours later. It's safe to say that even though we've had that gun back, its damage will never return to being that powerful. Did you know at one point we were going to be able to customize our own battle bus? That's right, worked on all the way back in late Chapter 1. There was going to be an item slot in our locker to be able to customize our battle bus that says jump from a personalized battle bus, so everyone in game would actually see a different version of it depending on what cosmetics they'd applied. However, that would maybe be a little bit confusing. They decided to scrap this idea. Instead, we get different themed battle buses throughout the year for Fortnitemares, FNCS, etc., instead of our own custom ones. Now, there's an emote that's still in the in-game files right now called the Koi Dance emote. It was a part of the Gen Hoshino Soundwave series all the way in 2022, but the weird thing is the emote never had any sound to it. So during the Soundwave show, you could use the emote, but it was completely silent. It had everything ready to go into the item shop for us to purchase, but obviously it wasn't released because it'd be an emote that literally made no noise. Maybe Epic Games is still working on it, and one day we can use it properly. Playground mode completely changed how Fortnite was played. Before it was launched in Season 4, if you wanted to get better at Fortnite, you'd have to go into an actual game to practice building or even editing. Playground mode allowed you to safe space to jump in with your friend, practice building 1 versus 1, and the skill level of players went straight up as soon as this mode was added. It stayed in the game until early Chapter 2, but was updated and replaced to end up being Battle Labs. But Battle Labs was also removed back in Chapter 4. Only a handful of players will ever have got their hands on the Eye of the Storm Tracker. In Chapter 1 Season 4, when the jetpack was meant to be added, this unreleased item called the Eye of the Storm Tracker was accidentally put in instead. Once equipped, it would replace your back bling and tell you where future storm circles were going to be. Actually a really powerful item whose features and actual visuals ended up being distributed into different features and different cosmetics, like the Storm Scout sniper rifle that would tell you the storms on the scope itself. But that's not all that got banned in pro play. gameplay, swinging your pickaxe became illegal as players started to use it during Chapter 2 to symbolize to each other that they were not going to shoot each other and continue to rotate into the next zone without being contested. Epic Games ended up building a system into their game where it would actually auto-ban players if it managed to work out that they were doing anything like swinging their pickaxe to create teaming and communication between people in a tournament, which ended up being carried across to normal games of Fortnite as well to have stopped people from teaming. But you may have used the Spiky Stadium. It was a Porter Challenge item added only into Playgrounds mode. It was inspired by videos from creators like Lachlan, and even I did some, where they build custom stadiums from scratch and then play mini games against other creators. And Epic thought they'd help out and create an item that once thrown down would spawn an entire stadium ready to make these videos. This was added in before creative mode, when Playground was the only way of playing Fortnite with a 1-hour timer, and then once the timer was gone, the mode was ended. Since Playground isn't a thing anymore, the Spiky Stadium isn't available anymore, but real OGs will remember it. The belly dance emote has actually been seen by all of us. If we jumped off the battle bus at the beginning of Chapter 2 and looked off to the left, you would actually see the Rustler skin doing an emote that was never put in the game. All the other skins in the battle pass are doing emotes that are released and are available for us to use. And leakers say that this belly dance emote was actually ready to be released, but they decided to pull it and then was eventually deleted from the in-game files, maybe because the emote's a little bit too suggestive. So why did Peely get removed from the game? And not just Peely. In fact, all of the battle pass skins from Chapter 2 Season 2 had a massive bug that wouldn't occur until the start of Chapter 3. With the introduction of the Spider-Man web-slinger mythics, if you held these mythics and swapped in between the pickaxe and the web-slingers really quickly, whilst wearing a gold variant of any of the Chapter 2 Season 2 Battle Pass skins, you would start to glow gold and cause everyone's frame rate around you to drop massively. In fact, it was so bad you could even cause some people's games to fully crash, and Epic Games realized how bad this was, and for the first time ever, removed an entire line of Battle Pass skins from the game within the competitive modes, only updating them and fixing them properly 2 weeks later. But do you remember dynamic weather? If you played during the start of Chapter 3, you may have come across different weather events like lightning and tornadoes. These would randomly spawn throughout a game, but were very rare, only available for this single season, and have never been brought back since. So if you weren't playing then, you will have never found it in-game again. Did you know we were meant to get skins from the Matrix films also in 2021? This was a hot year for things coming out, with leakers finding names for both Neo and Trinity. When the Matrix finally arrived into the item shop, there were no specific skins to be found, but the IDs for those two names were still there. And of course, we've already had Keanu Reeves officially added in the game with his official John Wick skin, so adding him in again through the Matrix wouldn't be too hard for Epic Games to do. And it was due to release in December alongside the Matrix Resurrection movie, but it looks like we're never going to see these skins in game. And you should always pay attention to the item shop around New Year's, as some of the rarest items ever have been released then and never come back because it's simply to do with the year you're in. Like New Year's 2024, there was an emote called Shave the Date, where it would actually shave a 2023 ice carving into 2024, but Epic messed up and forgot to add it to the very last update of 2023. When it finally was added to the game, it was towards the end of January 2024, so they decided to just scrap it and never let people use it. Did you know that the first time Epic added balloons in-game, they were very different? I even forgot this, but balloons originally were held by your character's hands, were purple rarity, and if you swapped out of the balloons whilst holding them, they would instantly pop and you would fall down. It would take 6 full balloons for you to float all the way up to max height. Because you couldn't use a weapon whilst holding them, they weren't very useful. They obviously since returned, and it would change so that they hung on your back. You could use weaponry whilst floating up in the air, and it would only take 3 balloons for you to float all the way to the top, making them a lot more useful. Epic will want to work in a new type of emote called Shout Communication emote that actually sounds so cool. These emotes would play a short audio clip in-game, but being worked on during Chapter 2. They'd shout out iconic moments like Courage JD saying, "Bow down to Booger." There's a moment taken from the Fortnite World Cup, or even Obi-Wan Kenobi saying, "I have the high ground." You can see a list on screen here of some of the audio shouts that were going to be added. Imagine literally shouting, "1v1 me," or "I have the high ground," as you build on top of someone. An amazing idea, but just 6 days after Fortnite started adding files into the game, they took it out again, and I've got to say, this needs to come back because it will create some incredible moments. Rare cosmetics mean a lot to people. I bought thousands over the years, but sometimes they've been accidentally added into the item shop for a very short amount of time, allowing people to pick them up when they're not meant to. Like the Mako glider that was meant to be a season shop exclusive glider in 2018, but it appeared in the item shop for just a few minutes, years after it was originally released. The Reflex outfit was added to the item shop, but removed because it was meant to be an NVIDIA exclusive skin. They later gave people the black and red skin instead. The Rambunctious emote was removed because of a 2018 lawsuit, and the Share the Wealth emote was removed from the item shop because they added it in just one day after Epic Games laid off loads of their employees. Not a good look. And one of the craziest removals of all time that blew people's mind and somehow managed to stay a secret, launched in Chapter 3 Season 2. Teased in the actual trailer for the season, with Sloan using a magical device to wipe all builds from the island, the Zero Builds mode was created, a mode that me and I'm sure loads of you play to this day as their main mode in Fortnite. This is one of the biggest risks Fortnite have ever taken, and it massively paid off, making taking away building one of the best additions it ever done. A bit like Katniss Everdeen, of course from the Hunger Games, was actually meant to be one of the hunters included in Chapter 2 Season 5. We got a ton of collaboration hunters added into the game. It was also included in that set of internal Epic Games documents as one of the collaborations they were working on including, and it would have been perfect for the next Chapter 2 season, which included bows. No files for Katniss Everdeen ever actually entered the game, and I guess with Epic working on so many collaborations at one time, some of them just never end up happening. And talking of emotes, the Rambunctious and Fresh emote were inspired directly from the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and they tried to sue Epic for taking the dance, but apparently you can't own movements. So Epic won. However, they never released the emotes ever again, and to this day, they're some of the rarest emotes in the game. Now, I love the Myths Immortal season, and you'll all recognize this skin. It was originally meant to be called Slurp Poseidon, but in fact got released as just Poseidon, like one of the Greek gods. He's obviously Slurp Skin and Poseidon together, so why Epic couldn't release him as that name, we'll never know. Later on in 2021, we were meant to get an Icon Series emote for the song AM to PM. It was added into the game with one of the new updates at the time, but unfortunately, DaBaby, who's on the track, made some comments in real life that Epic Games were not keen on and scrapped the release of his emote, and have never returned any of his other tracks in-game, with the AM to PM emote actually fully deleted from the game. And I'm so upset that these skins weren't available to everyone. When the Imposters mode dropped in Fortnite, it was a copy of Among Us, but everyone loved it, and they planned on releasing a Jonesy Among Us skin. The crazy thing is, this skin wouldn't even be in the shop. It was just given to you as a random color to signify your character whilst playing the mode, so you could easily call out that it was Jonesy Blue or Jonesy Red that had killed someone. Since it was technically a recolor of a Battle Pass version of Jonesy, the skins were never properly used, and even the Imposters mode was removed after just 1 year. Like just this year, when controversial emotes had to be removed, like Laugh It Up, Take the L, Whip Crack, and Make It Plantain, with a new setting being added in-game that you have to turn on to allow you to see these emotes being used. But by default, this is now turned off for everyone, so most people will never see you use these emotes. And now, imagine you're playing Fortnite, your teammate steals your loot from a chest, but you could actually shoot them. This was a thing when Fortnite first came out, as friendly fire meant that if you shot your teammate either on purpose or by accident, they would take damage. It got so bad, however, that some streamers, if they knew their teammate had a golden scar, would just shoot them and take their weapons, that they had to remove it out the game as early as January 2018 and has never been seen since. And Epic Games actually deleted an emote from a skin by accident, and it took them 6 weeks to fix it. In the Winterfest update for Chapter 5, Fortnite accidentally deleted the built-in Metamorphosis emote for Kado Thorn that transforms him into a vampire. It disappeared out of everyone's locker. The skin literally literally could not transform, and it took 6 weeks for Epic Games to realize they'd messed up, fix it, and put it back in the game. At the start of Chapter 3, a fan favorite feature was added into the game as tents became functional places for you to store items, allowing you to access them between different games. But it came with a lot of issues, initially allowing players to bring guns that weren't even meant to be in the game, like the original pump shotgun. And despite patching that, tents then started to appear on Spawn Island, which created even more issues. If you went inside a tent just before the battle bus set off, then attempt to jump from the battle bus, your game would completely bug out, making you invisible, and this issue was the last straw and have since been completely removed from the in-game files. You may remember the shakedown feature added in Chapter 2, allowing you to shake down an enemy player, and if you're playing in duos, trios, or squads, it would show you where the rest of the teammates were on the map. But it had a big issue that the shakedown button was the exact same as the reload button, and people would accidentally shake down rather than reloading and found it really annoying. With the start of Chapter 3, Epic removed the feature. The weird thing is they only removed half the files from the game. In some LTMs, you can still use the shakedown feature, except the animation doesn't quite work properly. With the launch of the Season 6 Battle Pass, there was some interesting physics for some of the skins. The Calamity skin, by accident or by purpose, had some interesting physics that players very quickly noticed. Players messed around with this using some very specific emotes, and Epic very quickly said that this was an embarrassing feature and took it out the game the very same day. Count yourself lucky if you were able to use anything in this video, and click on screen here to see a load of secrets on my Fortnite map, Super 1v1 free-for-all, you can't find anywhere else. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you over there.